Hi, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be my February TBR, and all I have to say is thank God January is finally over. I am excited for February. I am really excited about the books I'll be reading. The first book I want to chat about is going to be the Reading Realm book club pick. We're continuing on in the Faithful and the Fallen series, and we will be reading Ruin by John Gwynne. It's so heavy. This is the third book in this series, and the first book follows this group of people who are basically dealing with the existence of this prophecy, which is telling them that this war that happened, I think, centuries ago between gods, giants, humans, and like all creatures and stuff, this war that happened previously is kind of like coming back around, and it's gonna start picking up and happening again. Like, the war is not over, and there's so much more to it than that, but it's just really hard to explain any details without giving spoilers for this series. I will just say that I think this series does a really great job of highlighting the juxtaposition between good and evil in a way that shows us that like the line between them is like so much thinner than what we think. There are good people in here who are making bad choices. There are terrible people in here who are like making choices that might end up being like for the greater good, and they don't realize it yet. I just find it really interesting. I do think that this is a series where the plot is a little bit slow and a lot of the focus is on the characters. The plot still has like a lot of action. There are battles. There's people getting information. There's cogs working, like the wheels are turning, things are happening. But I just think that the characters kind of carry the plot like with them essentially. And so we spend a lot of time with the characters and you really get to feel for the people in here. And I just think it's crazy how like there are some people you meet at the beginning of book one that by the end of book two, like your opinion on them is so different from where you first met them. And I just love the way that John Gwynne writes characters like that, where they are so versatile and intriguing to read about. So can't wait to read this one. We will be reading it from February until middle of March because she's thick. I actually opened up the discussion posts for this in the Discord in the middle of January because of how big this is, and we will be reading this until the middle of March. And then after this, our next book will go until the end of April. And then for the rest of 2025, I have a lot going on. I'm supposed to be moving in the summer. So in like 5 months, I'm supposed to be moving, and I don't know when yet or how. And I don't exactly know where. Like, I know the city, but we don't have a house yet. So because of all that, the book club is going to read one book over 2 months. So for 2025, we should only have 6 books that we read together. And I really hope that in 2026, I'm not as busy and I'll be fully settled in at the new house and I can just engage with book club more. But yeah, so this is our next pick, and book club for the rest of the year will just be very chill. If you're in the Discord with me, expect a very chill buddy read book club experience for the rest of this year. The next book I'm going to read is Amari and the Despicable Wonders. This is empty. I have actually already started this because as of the time I'm filming this, it is the week of Breath of the Wild-a-thon, and this is on my TBR for that week. However, Breath of the Wild-a-thon doesn't end until February 2nd, so I wanted to make this a priority and get it done at the beginning of February because I really want to get caught up on this series. As you know, if you've been here before, catching up to series and making progress in series I'm already reading is one of my 2025 goals this year, so I'm keeping the momentum going with these 2 books in series. Speaking of making progress in series, the next book I'm going to read in February is The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. This is the 3rd and final book in the Broken Earth trilogy. When I read book 1, I spent the majority of my time being so confused, and then by the time I got to the end, my jaw was on the floor. It was so good. Like, the confusion of like what exactly was happening kind of added to that experience, where once I got to the end and I kind of realized like, oh my God, like this is what's going on, it just made me appreciate every minute that I spent struggling to figure out what was happening. I was like, oh my God, it all makes so much sense now. But at the same time, like I could have never saw this coming. And I thought book 1 was so masterfully done. Unfortunately, I didn't love book 2 as much. I do still think book 2 was good, but for me, it was just not as great as book 1. However, I have high hopes that book 3 will bring that heightened experience back so I can finish off this series with a bang. If you don't know what the Broken Earth trilogy is about, this is essentially kind of our world, but kind of not. It's a very futuristic, like desolate, dystopian version of our world, and there are some people who can control weather and the earth. There are like forces at play that are, you know, oppressing people with this magic. They don't want this magic to be in the world, and these magic users like persist and still exist despite all of that. And we kind of follow this like earth as it's changing, and the weather becomes more and more aggressive, and then these magic users who can like kind of control the weather kind of find themselves like in need again. And there's also a school where people can go to like hone their magic, but it's very much controlled by like those people who want to oppress it. So it's like you can use magic under their rules, and if they say you can, and no other way are you allowed to like use magic. So I thought it was really interesting. That's really all that I can tell you without spoiling any of it. There are 3 POVs in this series. One of them is a second person POV, so it's almost talking to you as if you're there. And then the other 2, I believe one of them is third person and one of them is first person. I think it's either that way or they're both third person, I think. But the writing choices in this series are so unique and really bring an extra layer to the table of like the experience you have of this like crazy futuristic but sort of dystopian apocalyptic almost version of Earth. Like it definitely gives to that sense of unease about how the world is changing, and it was just really good. I really hope that book 3 blows me away, because book 2 was not as good. It did let me down a little bit, but I mean, I still enjoyed it, and I am hoping to enjoy this one too. The next book I want to read in February is Nana by Brandon Massey. This is a horror novel. I have heard at least 4 or 5 people talk about this book within like the last 4 or 5 years of me like watching BookTube, and I literally can't tell you what the synopsis is. I don't ever remember them telling me the synopsis. I just know that they were people who loved it. So I'm gonna read what it says. Monica Stevens never knew her birth mother. Raised by a strict but loving adoptive parent, she blossomed into a woman with a thriving career as a pediatrician and a family of her own. But sometimes she wondered about her origins, especially her biological mother, until Grace arrives. Confessing to be the birth mother Monica had long wanted to meet, Grace quickly becomes an indispensable member of the Stevens household, cooking their meals, looking after the children, comforting Monica when the family dog is inexplicably killed, tending to Monica as she falls ill to a mysterious sickness that every day makes Monica look and feel older. Meanwhile, Grace is looking better, more vibrant, more youthful, more seductive. Monica's husband, Troy, knows something is up. He launches an investigation into the woman who demands to be called Nana and has taken over his home. But the truth is beyond their wildest imaginings. It seems Grace has done this before. Ooh, is she like... Okay, my prediction is that like maybe she's some kind of succubus. I really just hope that this like scares me, because I have been really like loving reading like creepier, scarier books lately, and I've been wanting to get more into horror this year. That's another one of my like kind of small goals, and the way that I am jump-starting that goal is I am participating in the 2025 Black Horror Reading Challenge, which was created by Book Tribe with Ty on Instagram. So I will link her post with the challenge down in the description. But I saw this post pop up probably like mid to late December, and I had already told myself like, okay, in 2025 we're gonna branch out. I love fantasy, I love it so much, but we're gonna read more horror. And I saw that post and I was like, it's meant to be. I just had to join in. So really excited to read Nana by Brandon Massey. This is a book that, again, I've heard it here and there talked about for the last few years. I don't think it's like widely popular on BookTube, but I think in horror spaces specifically, like it is a well-known horror book, and the description sounded creepy. I think maybe she's a succubus. Don't know if that's true, but I guess I'll find out. And the last book that I'm going to officially put on my TBR for February is Delicious Monsters by Lascelles Samberry. This is a book that gives me the Haunting of Hill House vibes. I don't think it's gonna be a similar plot, but it has kind of that same vibe where there's a mysterious house, someone ends up going to live there, weird things are happening, you know? According to the back, Daisy sees dead people, something impossible to forget in bustling, ghost-packed Toronto. She usually manages to deal with her unwanted ability, but she's completely unprepared to be dumped by her boyfriend. So when her mother inherits a secluded mansion in northern Ontario, where she spent her childhood summers, Daisy jumps at the chance to escape. But the house is nothing like Daisy expects, and she begins to realize that her experience with the supernatural might be no match for her mother's secrets, nor what lurks within these walls. A decade later, Brittany is desperate to get out from under the thumb of her abusive mother. A best-selling author who claims her stay at Miracle Mansion allowed her to see the error of her ways. But Brittany knows that's nothing but a sham. She decides the new season of her popular haunted web series will uncover what happened to a young black girl in the mansion 10 years prior and finally expose her mother's lies. But as she gets more wrapped up in the investigation, she'll have to decide. If she can only bring one story to light, which one matters more, Daisy's or her own? As Brittany investigates the mansion in the present, Daisy's story runs parallel in the past, both timelines propelling the girls to face the most dangerous monsters of all, those that hide in plain sight. First of all, how cool does that sound? Second of all, I love stories that have dual timelines where we have a timeline in the present that we discover what happened in the past, like alongside that present day character. I fucking eat that shit up. I love books like that so much. That happens in Wayward by Amelia Hart. There's also a like little bit of that in The Starless Sea. This also happens in Lucy Undying by Kirsten White. But yeah, so I love all those books, and so I'm really excited for this one. I think that this is gonna be really haunting and not just in a supernatural sense, because again, it says the most dangerous monsters of all are the ones that hide in plain sight. So I think that this is gonna possibly highlight how people can also be monsters. And I love a good scary, speculative, like supernatural haunted house. Like I love a good haunted house, and I feel like they're really hard to come by lately. There's a lot of haunted house novels out there, but I don't think a lot of them are like good. Unfortunately, I think The Good House by Tananarive Due is a really good example of the way that I like haunted houses to be, where the house is this entity all on its own, but there is also a lot of like heart, and you feel for the characters, and like in the story, the house and the people kind of share like equal importance, and I like getting to see those characters and learn about them and care about them, because then when a scary or like bad thing happens to them in the house, I feel like it puts me as a reader more on the edge of my seat, because now I'm like, oh my god, this character I care about is like in peril, in danger. And I think the little hints that we get that Brittany and her mother have this tension going on, I think that's gonna resonate with me. But yeah, this is one that I've been really excited to read ever since I saw it, and this is actually one that I've never heard people talk about. I did know the author's name, but I picked this up at a Barnes & Noble, I think in June of last year, just because I thought the cover was beautiful and creepy. So I read the back and I was like, wait, this sounds so good. It does give me a little bit of that Haunting of Hill House vibes, where there are multiple timelines, haunted house, you know, this person is investigating like what went on there, which in the book Haunting of Hill House, it is very much like more so of a professor who's kind of investigating what happened in the house. And I know the show is like vastly different from that. It is about a family who kind of goes back there and then they relive their like past, I guess. But yeah, this has more of the book aspect where it's like the research and exposing the truth kind of thing. So very excited for this one. So let me know one of the books you're going to be reading in February, or if any of these books that I talked about sound good to you. And if you made it this far in the video, leave the bee emoji down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.